A very warm welcome and good evening to all the teachers who joined us today. Welcome to another session of Teacher Connect webinars in 2022. In these monthly sessions, we aim to build and develop a vibrant community of practice for English language teachers and teacher educators. We hope you're finding the experience valuable and useful. Thank you for taking the time to join us today in part 2 of the talk on inclusive practices in the English classroom. I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Santosh Mahapatra, who will facilitate this session. Dr. Santosh Mahapatra works in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus. He teaches courses on academic English and critical pedagogy and supervises PhD students. His research interests are teacher development, technology integration, and language policy. The first part of the two-part webinar series on inclusive practices in the English classroom introduced the concepts of disability and inclusiveness. This second part aims to familiarize teachers with strategies that they can use for addressing the needs of English language learners experiencing language-based learning disabilities, or LBLD in short. The webinar will start with a discussion on common instructional strategies for teaching students with LBLD in an inclusive setting. Then the focus will be on approaches to teaching major language skills and components. After that, we will look at how to make assessment of language ability accommodative. The last part of the webinar will cover the professional development of English language teachers in this area. Finally, in the Q&A session, you will get an opportunity to ask questions and interact with Santosh. Over to you, Santosh.
Thank you, Ashwini. And we had the last session, so some of you might be familiar with what we did in the last one. In the last one, we got introduced to the concepts of disability or difficulties, problems in the classroom, different kinds of problems. And we talked about what it means to be inclusive in the classroom. This one will be more specific to English language classroom and English language skills and components. So let's get started. Okay. So in this one, first we'll start with some common instructional strategies that you can use in your classroom. Here we'll be talking about general classrooms where you have students who are experiencing LBLD or language-based learning difficulties or disabilities. And you have students who do not have such problems. So we are talking about general classrooms that most of us are teaching. This is not really for teaching students separately and addressing problems that that requires special education as such, special training as such. And then we'll talk about approaches to teaching L, listening, speaking, R, reading, W, writing, V, vocabulary, G, grammar, T, thinking. I'm adding thinking as a skill here, and V and G are components. So we'll be talking about them, but focus will be on reading first, and then writing, and then we'll be talking about oral skills together. And vocabulary and grammar will integrate with these things. We are talking about school level teaching, so mostly we would prefer something like integrated approach to teaching. Then we'll talk about assessment and how to make assessment accommodative in your classroom. And then lastly, we'll talk about our own professional development. We need to grow as educators, as language educators, and make our classrooms more effective, more inclusive in nature. And I hope this session helps you towards that. So when we talk about common instruction strategies. There are strategies which are kind of well established in the field of inclusive education, and people in language education specifically, they take up these approaches, and these are considered to be quite effective. Okay, but after I talk about these four, I would want you to decide which one you would prefer over others, if you have a preference. Okay, so let's begin. The first one is Universal Design for Learning, UDL. Just remember the short forms, it will be useful. And then second one will be peer assisted learning strategies. Third one is multisensory approach, and fourth one is scaffolding. You might be familiar with some of these things, but now let's get into details of what each one means. Let's talk about the first one. UDL is a strategy which is used by probably all of you who are here. All teachers ideally should be using UDL, which means making the classroom interactive, giving opportunity to all learners, creating a classroom atmosphere which can cater to the needs of language needs of all learners. And you have variety in your tasks and activities that you are using in the classroom, so that you can, because there might be learners who might want to engage, let's say, with pictures, and some others might want to engage with physical activities. Some others would like to write, some may want to make presentations and talk. So if you have all kinds of activities involving all these things, probably it will be a good thing, a variety of tasks. Okay, and there should be some kind of equity, which means learners should have their individual learning goals, and you should help learners achieve those goals, or set those goals and help them achieve those goals. Not the same goal for the entire class. The next one is peer assisted learning strategies, which is called PALS. It requires some amount of preparation in the beginning. That means you need to train your learners in the beginning. This kind of peer tutoring strategy starts with the teacher creating pairs in the classroom, training students how to help each other. And in the pair, you have one student who is doing well in language, is able to use language more fluently and more effectively than the other one. So you put them as a pair and teach them how to help each other. The one who is struggling with language, who has who is facing some problems with using language, can learn from the other can help them. And in the process of helping, you need to convince this person that when you help somebody, you also learn, you have more clarity about language use. So something that you need to develop in learners. Some learners may have this confusion, this doubt about your intention. So you need to convince them. Next one is a multisensory approach, which is, I made it VAK, which is V is visual, A is auditory, K is kinesthetic, and T is tactile. So I'm thinking about activities which engage all these four senses. It will be interesting to come up with those activities. Think about how you can engage and what kind of activities. That will require another webinar where we talk about multisensory approach in detail. But this will be interesting. So think about, if you have done this, it's good. If you have not done this, you can go back and check how we can create language activities and tasks which involve multisensory engagement. And last one is scaffolding, which comes from Piaget, Brunner, if you remember. So we are thinking about how you can create in the classroom. You give instructions, step-by-step instructions. Help your learners complete tasks, participate in activities. Give them feedback regularly so that they can move in the required direction and learn this required skills or the target skills. In the process of completing the task, learners learn. But this step one, do this and feedback. Step two, do this and feedback. This goes like this, and you keep scaffolding, means you keep supporting your learners. And the kind of support they require might be different from, vary from one learner to another learner. So that should be something that you should keep in mind. So now you have these four. Now let me know which one would you prefer. Amna, could you share the Menti link in the chat box? Could you visit the link and respond to the Mentimeter, the question I have put there? Which one would you prefer? Why? There is no space for why in that. You have to write in the chat box after you mention which one you would prefer. I'm sharing the screen. You might use all 4 of them. There is no problem. But just curious to know whether you have a preference for one over others. Nice. So many people are responding. Come on. Let's go to the next one. I have one more. You can mute yourself. Somebody is audible. Okay. So we have the most preferred one is peer assisted learning strategies, which is possible in your classroom. Probably you think that that's most doable or practical for your classroom. So it varies from one classroom to other. That's why we have, there is no agreement as such. Let's go to the next one. Which one of the following would be the most difficult one for you to implement in your classroom? This is kind of a follow-up question. The point here is to show you that classrooms are different and your learners are different from each other. The batch you are teaching could be different from another batch or another batch taught by another teacher. And you as a teacher could be very different in your approach to teaching another teacher. So we have our preferences, and the school management also determines to a great extent how we teach, what kind of strategies we adopt in our classroom. So yeah, because of all that, we have this, and now I'm thinking about this. I want you to tell me why that thing, why this preference. Students can collaborate. Scaffolding helps them become independent. That's why scaffolding. Okay. Any other reason why? You can mention the reasons in the chat box if you are done with the poll. Involving multiple senses can be challenging. Yes, that's a good one, Rini. Scaffolding would be time consuming. Yeah, agree. MSA would be very difficult. UDL is tough because all students are not same. Yeah, this is precisely, Nivedita, this is precisely, we have UDL. They are not same. We acknowledge that they're not same. Okay, I'll go back to my presentation and we'll continue. So we have preferences and we know why we then want one kind of strategy over others. And there can be several factors that determine to a great extent why you choose one strategy over others. And you are in the best position to decide this kind of strategy. But always talk to your colleagues, talk to experts, talk to people who work in the area, and then take a call and see if you can implement certain things and practice, improve your practice in some ways. There is always scope for improvement. So it's important for us to keep learning. That we'll discuss in the last section of this webinar. So let's move on, go to the next one. So this is what I'm thinking about when I'm talking about a classroom, which caters to the needs of LBLD learners facing language-based learning and disabilities. I'm thinking about this framework. Okay, the first one is first you need to identify the strengths of learners. Learners are able to do certain things. All learners are in a position to do certain things, or they are able to perform certain tasks really well, or they have interest in certain things. So you need to note down if there are, you need to identify the strengths of those learners and note down those strengths so that you can plan your strategies accordingly, plan your teaching accordingly. The next one is think about what are the things that hinder their learning. If they are not really comfortable with certain things, you need to make a list of those things that these people are not, this person is not very comfortable with this or that. So make a list of all the barriers, all the things that hinder or that obstruct learning in the classroom. And the next one is thinking about equity. Equity means it's not equality. Equity means providing support, only that much of support that a learner needs. Okay, so equality is providing equal amount of support to everybody. Equity means providing support as much as the learner needs. So some learners may need a little more support than others. As a teacher, you need to identify that and keep that in mind, that these are the learners who need little more support, little more hand holding, little more scaffold. Think about them, make a list. Then it should be individualized because we are thinking about LBLD learners and the problems they are facing could be very different from one another. So that's why you need to identify, you need to individualize your approach to teaching. That means you need to come up with activities which can cater to needs of individual learners. So there might be a group, ultimately you may have a group of learners who have a preference for certain kind of tasks and activities. So individualize as much as you can. I'm not saying that every single student in a class of 70 should be met. It may not be possible in all classes, but try your best what you can do in your setting. And it should be ongoing. There is no end to I'm done, so I planned it and it's over. That doesn't work in an inclusive classroom. It's an ongoing process, which means we need to keep thinking about if there are learners, if there are people who are facing problems and they have difficulty in learning in the classroom. If you have such learners, if you have such learners who are struggling with learning, that means you need to keep thinking. And the problem, you may not be able to observe something in this class, you may find it in the third or fourth or 10th or 12th class. So you need to be alert. And this process, thinking the things I'm talking about, identification or removal or equity or individualizing the learning thing, approach to teaching, all these things should continue. So when we think about now, let's think about the first skill, the most important one, perhaps the most important skill when it comes to learners facing problems of facing, learners facing language-based disabilities. They face in research, if you look at research, you see that most of the problems are around reading. Okay. So let's start with reading. That's why I'm not starting with LS or W, I'm starting with R first. So these are the focus points I'm talking about in reading. First one is reading comprehension. This is funny because recently I read an article where I say that reading comprehension as such cannot be a skill as such. You are not really thinking about reading comprehension because whenever you read, there is already comprehension. Why are you thinking about reading comprehension? I'm just thinking about that. But it is one of the focus areas. Then next one is reading fluency. Third one is phonics. Fourth one, vocabulary development. Fifth one, phonemic awareness. Sixth one, phonological awareness. Seventh one, oral language. Now, hold on. I'm sure that you know some of these terms. You are familiar with some of these terms, but you may not be familiar with all the terms. Okay. What I'll do, I'll give you kind of a matching exercise here. Okay. Can you match 1 and 2 with 2 of these 5 terms that are given here? Can you do that and write in the chat box? Okay. We have a lot of responses. Nice. Okay, let's go to the next one and check if you understand the next part. And then we'll check whether, then you can check whether your response is right. Okay. Can you match 3, 4, 5 with the rest and mention in the chat box? 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Well. Okay, let's look at the answers and see if what you guessed is correct. So A is 3, if you mention that, and then B is 1, D is 5, E. So 3 is A, next B is 1, which has to do with this one. So you have skills, things like predicting, summarizing, developing questions, creating mental maps, identifying meaning through connection of ideas, relating the content to our own experience. This is about reading comprehension. And phonological awareness has to do with the second one we talked about earlier, which has to do with identifying rhyming words, recognizing alliteration, segmenting words and sounds within words, blending together. So you can use these strategies for teaching. In the process of telling you what these things involve, there are many more things which you can explore. For each category, you can explore more. But these are some of the things you can do when you are teaching reading in your classroom and with learners who are experiencing LBLD or language-based learning disabilities. Okay. Explore these strategies. If you want to read more, you can take these words and Google and find more information. You can find out how you can develop activities which focus on these areas. Not very difficult. Once you start doing things, you will enjoy creating those activities. Okay, let's go to the next one and think about writing. Okay. When we talk about reading, we are focusing on reading, starting with how you can relate letters to sounds, sounds to breaking words into sounds, and then reading aloud, and then comprehension, then thinking about fluency. You slowly building and thinking about a school situation, and you are building on that. And when we are talking about reading, it involves a lot of oral discussions. I'm talking about a lot of speaking in the classroom. So you see that in an inclusive classroom, you cannot segregate skills. Like I'm teaching reading, I'm focusing only on reading. That doesn't work. Or if I'm teaching writing, I'm teaching only writing. If you can integrate skills, that will work really, really well. But one thing you need to remember is to be explicit. Means we always talk about implicit teaching. We always talk about not talking about things openly, not telling them what is this, what is that, using terminology, but it may not work all the time. So you need to use more explicitly the terminology and explain things more explicitly in an inclusive classroom, because that's how the instructions you'll be able to reach out. You'll be able to talk to people who are experienced or students who are experiencing LBLD. And that's something that you need to think about. Think about writing. So I have these components: handwriting, spelling, punctuation, grammar, generating ideas, organizing, revising, and all these things will depend a lot on the planning you make in the beginning. So let's start with the first thing, handwriting. So there are a lot of activities that you can do to improve handwriting, but handwriting is not really kind of well-researched area in LBLD. So you may not find much of information on handwriting, but if you write to me, I can share one article which is which focuses exclusively on handwriting. It can be useful. It's easy to read, and you can actually get a lot of information about how to improve handwriting of learners who are struggling with handwriting. Spelling will require some special attention. We'll talk about it a little bit. And then punctuation and also grammar. Again, grammar, explicit teaching of grammar needs to happen in the classroom, but you cannot, it has to be again balanced, and you have to teach grammar along with reading, along with speaking, along with writing, all those things. You have to integrate. You cannot go alone with grammar as such. You cannot have a grammar class as such. It's pretty difficult for them. So if you relate with reading and writing or speaking and then teach, I think that works better. So we'll talk about it a little more. Here I go. Any other strategy you have in mind here? When I'm thinking, which one I'm thinking about here? Can you write in the chat box? Sound letter relationship, guessing spelling from sounds in a word, 80% old plus 20% new words, slow and intensive exercises, writing on word, dictionaries. What is it I'm referring to here? Which one? Anyone? You can write in the chat box. Yeah, we are talking about spelling. You are right. Can you give me more strategies? Think about these strategies. If you can think of more strategies, can you write in the chat box? Okay, phonics. And anything else? For spelling, anything else? Phonics, yes, it will work well. Pronunciation, for spelling, you can do that with phonics. I think that works. Yes, Alan. Any other strategy? So you have sound letter relationship. You can explore that. Words with action. Yep. Total physical response can be a good one for spelling, but I don't know how it will work. You have something like hangman games. So you can think about breaking the word. Yeah, that works. Words with pronunciation works well. Okay, let's go to the next one. Which one is this? Letter formation, alphabetic knowledge, speed. We are not talking about vocabulary here. We are talking about handwriting here. Yes, Nidhi, we are talking about handwriting. Any other strategy you can think of here? Memory retrieval has to do with you write in certain way and then you go back and check, remove certain parts and show them this is what is there. Can you write the other parts properly, like the way it's written? So yeah, kinesthetic, some kind of kinesthetic activity will work also, and how they hold. Model, do you think handwriting is important in language development? It may create certain problems. if you ask me whether handwriting is important, I'll say yes, because you are asking my opinion. But yeah, it gives confidence to the child, and it helps in also some kind of neurological development. So it's important. Yes, absolutely. Let's go to one more. Any other strategy if you want in handwriting, then you need to write to me. I can share with you that article which has exclusive discussion on handwriting. Let's go to the next one. This one. Which one is this? Explicit attention to punctuation when reading, comparing text with punctuation use. Yeah. So punctuation, when you are dealing with punctuation, one good strategy is to draw their attention to how the punctuation has been used in a piece of text. So when you are reading, ask them to look at where they have used commas and put a comma. Ask them whether they can put a comma here or there or there. Let's say one or two places, ask them to identify which is the appropriate place. Then next one is you can have two texts where you have used punctuations, you don't have punctuation, so put them on screen or put them on the blackboard or whatever it is, and then ask them to see or remove punctuation and say where they can insert punctuation. So those kind of games can be played, and the class can be divided into small groups. Each group gets one chance to go to the blackboard and insert a punctuation. That can be a good game actually. And you can individualize it. If you want to do that, you can do that. And then and then editing and revising at the end of anything they write, you can also take them to take them back to revising. That means editing and revising. Ask them to look at it in a group piece of text, which let's say in a group 4 people have written 4 texts. They take one piece of text and then try to see if the punctuation is right. I mean, the way they have used punctuation is appropriate. So if there are changes they want to make in punctuation or insert punctuation somewhere, they should be allowed to do that. So if you play those games, consolidate in the entire class, you take 1 or 2 texts and read them out and ask the entire class for responses, and you note the punctuations. Repeat kind of 2-3 minute exercise after a writing class will help them. Think about it. So we are talking about grammar. There's nothing to hide here. Explicit teaching of grammar. Anybody who can tell me what is known to unknown? In the chat box. So I'm thinking about, when we are teaching grammar, they may have ideas about some aspects of grammar. Let's say they know what is a noun or what is a verb or what is an adjective if they know, or they know certain, something like that. So if they know certain things, you try to build on that and teach grammar. But the teaching, as I pointed out earlier, should be explicit. Okay. And citing examples, beginning with examples and going to rules may not always work. So sometimes you may need to start with rules and then ask for examples. So yeah, in this case, it can be slightly tricky. So you need to think about it carefully in the class. Think about whether, it's easy. So you have to mix it. It may not have to be always inductive or always deductive. So generally, they would like to know the rules. Generally, students experiencing LBLD and disabilities generally want to know rules. Then they can make use of rules and write grammatically correct, or when they are reading, they can understand tense forms and other things. So should be clear. Simple to complex, known to unknown, grammar in context, rule, example, rule. Yeah, that's the kind of strategy I'm thinking about. You talk about the rule first, ask them ask them to provide you with examples, and then go back to the rule again and talk about, do some activities, and then that kind of thing. may work with these people. So think about it. So which one? Can you match these two? Which one I'm talking about here? Group brainstorming, ensuring individual contribution, talk note, reading, creating mind maps. Okay, marks for ideas. Okay, we are talking about generating ideas. You are right. Yes, we are talking about generating ideas. So these are the strategies you can adopt for generating ideas in the classroom. Okay. Yep. You talk note is something that you can always use when you are asking them. Let's say they have to write an essay or they have to write a small paragraph on their family. So when they're telling you something, they should make note of these points. So there are certain points the group agrees. If you are doing a group activity or a pair activity, the pair agrees. So they take. So something like that can help them and create mind maps also in the process. You can elicit ideas from them and create mind maps on the board. So that works really well. Let's go to the next one. What about this one? B. Okay. Which one is B? Revisiting content, organization and mechanics, reflective process, talks, think aloud, use of clearly written rubrics, checklists, rewarding and questioning. Which one we are talking about here? Ah, you are right. We are talking about the third one, editing and improving. Yes. So generally, whenever they're writing a piece of text. In a classroom, it's difficult, I understand, but make the process of writing such that learners edit and improve as part of their writing. So they have clear you can create a checklist where have you written let's say a topic sentence. Does the topic sentence have a main idea and a topic? Then does it have supporting details that support the topic? Does it have a concluding sentence? Do you have two or more supporting details? Do you have a concluding sentence? Does it have an opinion slash a warning slash a prediction as part of? So something like that. Have you checked the have you checked the tense forms in the sentences? Have you checked the grammar in your sentence? Have you checked your pronunciation? Something like that. So you can create a checklist. Commas, full stops, capitalization, all those things. You can make a list of all those things, make a checklist, put it there on the, on walls and ask them to check when they are writing. That will help a lot of students. Once you prepare these things, you can reuse them all the time. So you may not have to create every day. So make sure that you have something like this. Okay, and now think about this one. Which one we are thinking about? Idea cards, use of graphic organizers, topic sentence, controlling ideas, supporting details, concluding sentence. Which one are we talking about here? We are talking about arranging ideas. So when we are talking about arranging ideas, you need to break the paragraph down to topic sentence, supporting details, concluding sentence. Then topic sentence to again like topic, main idea is topic and controlling idea. And then details are supporting the controlling idea. And what kind of details? You can say details can be divided into again categories. One can be explanation, one can be example, something like that. So you divide details into 2 explanations, 2 examples. So you have 2 ideas, so you have 4 sentences there. And then conclusion, you can say that conclusion can be either the conclusion can have a prediction or an opinion or a warning or something kind of a food for thought to conclude the paragraph. So always break it down to smaller parts, and you can refer to these books by Oxford. Oxford has academic writing, paragraph writing books, and refer to those books, academic writing, let's say A1, A2 level books. Those books, the exercises mentioned in those books are really, really useful. So go to those books, identify those exercises, adapt them. Okay, take them to your classroom in the way you want, I mean, which will be comfortable for your students. You need to adapt. You may not be able to use them directly all the time, but try to adapt them. But look up, check that book and see if it's useful. Now let's go to oral skills. Okay, next one. So in oral skills, I'm thinking about, so if you speak really fast, it becomes difficult. So if you are too slow, it may be boring for students. So you need to choose the pace, identify the exact pace at which you can speak. So that's a difficult thing. I understand that it's not really easy to manage that, but you need to identify how I can speak so that people can actually understand what I'm saying. Because LBLD learners generally struggle when it comes to this fast speeches. I mean, if you deliver it really fast, they may not be able to understand, they may not interact with you. Note taking is whenever you are teaching or you are teaching them writing and something, you can teach them note taking, and that will help them thinking about listening more than anything, listening. So you can give them a small, let's say 1.5 minute audio clip you can take, or a piece of text that you take, let's say 1.5 minutes to read out. You can take those and then ask them to make notes. In the beginning, what you can do, you can create notes, take out a few words and ask them to fill out those words. You can create different levels of activities from the same notes. Let's say you are taking a few words for certain students, few more words for certain students, and only the title is given, nothing is given for the ones who are doing really well in the class. So you have 3 categories, levels of tasks in terms of difficulty. That kind of thing you need to adopt in your classroom. Think about it. It's not very difficult as such. Once you create, you can reuse such tasks. So yeah. Repeat and emphasize is something that you can practice when you are speaking, when you are talking about certain aspects of, let's say, vocabulary or grammar. Some points you need to repeat, you need to stop and then re-emphasize and ask them to repeat. So something like that will help them remember, because they keep going back over and again, they may remember the rule and that may work really well for them. So repeat loudly, emphasize, again go back, ask them to repeat. Writing instructions also are important. That's why I talked about creating those, on chart papers, writing, how to write that paragraph, breaking it down, creating a checklist, all those instructions. Have you done this stage 1? Have you done that stage 2? Have you done that stage 3? Those, if you can put it up on your classroom walls, that will help them a lot. So think about those. Regular use of visuals is another thing that if it's possible for you to use visuals in your classroom, then yes. Otherwise, photographs or paper, cuttings from newspapers and all could help. You can ask them to also bring to the classroom visuals, photographs and all. I think that will also engage them a lot, and that will help them. So picture-based writing can be something, picture-based speaking can be something that you can practice in your classroom. More time to respond. Sometimes they struggle to speak. That's why you wait for them. Let them respond. Sometimes you need to give them a little more time, extra time. So that patience is necessary. And they may struggle. New vocabulary needs to be discussed in the sense that you cannot just run and have have a vocabulary agreement and go. Maybe it's a good idea to keep that word in mind once in a while. You cannot do that all the time, but take the most difficult word that you are introducing them to on a particular day, and then ask them for words related to that word. Let's say you are talking about sky, they can say red sky, blue sky, something like that. So those kind of words, and then some people can give you sentences. So you tell them, can you add a word after or before that, or use it in a sentence, whatever you can do. So you are also creating different levels of tasks in the classroom. Then I told you earlier in the beginning that instruction should be explicit. When you are asking them to do something, make it explicit, write it down, tell them, repeat it. And when you are teaching them, it should be sometimes telling them rules also helps. So support when there is necessary. It's necessary. When they ask for support, support them. So it's equity. Once again, the principle of equity should work. So sometimes people need more support. You should be there. Sometimes they may not need your help all the time. They want to do it on their own. They struggle. That's okay as long as they want to do that. So give them that freedom to choose whether they want your help or not. But tell them that you are there to help if they need your help. Okay, let's go to the next one. So which one of these would you allow in the classroom? How many of these you are comfortable with? You can write in the chat box. If you're comfortable with 1 to 6, you can write 1 to 6. If you're comfortable with only 1 or 2, yes, write 1 or 2. If you're comfortable with all of them, or none of them, none of them. So can you write in the chat box which one you are comfortable with? Asking students to speak clearly and loudly, asking yes/no questions, giving adequate time to respond, offering help when somebody struggles to answer, accepting written answers when responding orally is too difficult, allowing small one-to-one oral presentations. Okay. So the point here is to help you understand that these are the things, these are strategies which are often used with LBLD learners, but there might be an occasion where you are not really comfortable with some of these things. But it may be a good idea to learn also how we can use all these strategies. Can you use all these, all 1 to 6? How frequently, that you decide, but all these are useful strategies for your classroom. Okay. So think about it. And if you are struggling, if you think that some of these are not really possible in your classroom, can you learn to use in your classroom maybe all these strategies? Okay, think about it. Can you ask somebody to help you with these? We'll go to the next 7. I have 7 more. Can you choose out of these 7, which one you will be comfortable with? Keeping yourself accessible for regular conversations, not really always academic, but just conversations. Are you accessible? Involving a student with LBLD in lesson planning, possible. Demanding similar level of performance, if you think that's appropriate. Using explicit instructions, let's listen, let's find the main idea, let's prepare an oral presentation. Sounds interesting. Using picture-based instructions, asking for physical responses. You can try that. Allowing assistive technology use, mobile dictionary. Yeah, sometimes it works. Completing sentences of such students when they get stuck. I think sometimes you may find problematic, 9 and 13 could be problematic, not sure. 8 can be a good idea because the student may give you an idea. Maybe it's a good idea to talk to the person because they may be facing problems you may not be aware. So talking to them might help you design your lesson really well, plan your lesson really well. Think about it. I'm not saying that it's always possible, but if you can try, it may make you an even better teacher. Last one is slightly problematic. Research says it doesn't help much. So when they get stuck, you can ask them if you need help. You don't have to complete the sentence, but you can ask them, do you want me to say, give you a hint, give you a word, help you with a word? Do you want me to give you a few words you can use from? Something like that. Do you want my help? Something like that you can do. Do you need a few words? So you think about why they're getting stuck. Accordingly, you can plan. But it may be very difficult. It may not be a good idea to complete their sentences. It may have a negative impact on their confidence. So yeah, think about the last. Okay, let's go to the next one. Think about it. So we're thinking about affordable supplementary materials and technological tools here. Okay. Can you mute yourself? Yeah. So the first thing is, if you are thinking about supplementary materials and technology, affordability is important, and that's something that you need to start with. Whether you can afford those things. Not all schools can afford all kinds of technology and all kinds of materials. One. Two is something that is really accessible should be used. Start with something that is immediately there. You don't have to spend anything on this. And then type of LBLD, what kind of problems they're facing. Accordingly, you can make a plan, whether parents can support, whether the school can support, the community can support. Those ideas should follow after you think about the kind of problem they are facing. Then when we're thinking about supplementary materials, also think about, you need to focus on the same skills that are there in the syllabus, in the textbook, but create tasks at different levels. So the thing I told you earlier, when you are asking them to write a paragraph, some can write the topic sentence only, or some can add only the supporting details. Some can add only the complete concluding sentence. And some can write the entire paragraph. So this difficulty level, you can create a task which may have multiple difficulty levels. So try doing that. Think about, sensory, when you are involving all senses, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, all those kind of materials. Can you give me an example of that? Can you give me an example of VAKT driven materials? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, using videos, movie, asking questions. Okay. Anything else? Asking them to imitate actions or imitate a dialogue or something like that. Action with a dialogue, kind of that. That'll be both kinesthetic and okay, so you can do that. So think about how you can role plays, TED Talk videos. Dialogues can be very good. Panchatantra you can take, something like that, or any animation, local and in local stories or regional stories or stories they're familiar with. Take those stories, animation stories or normal stories, tell them those stories, ask them to enact those stories. So song to teach grammar, yeah. So I'm talking about different kinds of materials, maybe writing, maybe you are creating dolls to talk about their qualities, tall, short, broad shoulders, narrow shoulders, and all those. So dolls and all, and hands-on things in the classroom, dramatization, pictures, audio, video, clips, physically enacting in the classroom. So all kinds of put together. Bring together all kinds of materials. I think that will be useful. Good, 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 good. You have ideas. Last one is useful. Thinking about the portable devices. I'm thinking about software. Text-to-speech software. You have a lot available. You can just take this and think about. Just put it on Google. You will find text-to-speech free software. Speech recognition software, yeah, something like you have on Google Drive, on Google Docs, you have it. You can do that. Then work, Padlet, podcast. You're familiar with some of these things, but you have already talked about some of these things. So we have talked about certain things which are useful. But you think about skills and sub-skills that you can use with these. Can you give me one example of, let's say, using text-to-speech software or speech recognition? Which skill would you teach? If you are familiar, or take any of these, Padlet or podcasts or vlogs, which one would you teach? Just write the skill and the term from here and the skill. Newspaper to teach grammar, okay. I'm talking about these portable devices or portable digital tools. Picture reading, okay. These digital tools, any skill you have in mind, sentence construction, okay, text-to-speech software, that's right. Podcasts for which skill? Quizzes through Padlet, that's right, yeah, you can do that. You can have a mind map through podcasts, a Padlet for brainstorming, through Padlet, mind map or brainstorming, that's good one. Anjita, auditory skills, which one? Okay, Edmodo, word talk for text to speech, yeah. Quizzes to test grammar, yeah. So think about these things, okay. There are several digital tools that are available freely. Think about them. Now let's think about assessment. I'm thinking about when assessment should be integrated with teaching. So whatever task we talked about, you can use the same task for assessment purposes. And the same approach that we talked about when we talked about teaching. So multiple methods, we talked about different kinds of tasks. You use the same for assessment. Should be learner-centric because we are focusing on learners. So they should be able to learn when they are completing their assessment tasks. Integrated skills approach, once again, same as the teaching thing that we talked about earlier. Progress based has to do with when you keep a record of their progress, what they were able to do. Because in the beginning, we talked about creating individual goals and keeping track of whether they are able to achieve those goals, meet those goals. So think about that for individual learners. And creating, assessments which are alternative in nature. For example, portfolio or projects or oral tests rather than always written tests. So paper pencil test is regular, but can you accommodate portfolio-based assessment, project-based assessment, oral test, if it's possible? Do you think these assessment methods will be appropriate for your learners? That's something that you need to ask and then think about whether you can use them. And use of handheld devices. Can you allow them to use mobile phones or mobile dictionaries or laptops, something like that? Is it possible for you? Or will your institution allow? Can you invite somebody from outside and conduct a workshop and then make them change their minds? Think about these things. But I'm saying that assessment should go hand in hand with your teaching. The same approach, similar kind of methods, challenge levels, and all that you can create. Can you mention a few other assessment strategies? Think about some more assessment strategies if you have mentioned them. Okay. Which of these can you use in your classroom? Can you write in the chat box? Co-creating learning goals for each class. assessment rubrics. Which of these can you use? 1, 2, 5, okay. One, 4, 5. All these. Okay, all are possible. I guess all are possible. But sometimes you may struggle with some of these, but if you can try and implement, it will be useful. Let's think about our professional development here. This is the last part of our webinar. So let's talk about how we can grow as, inclusive educators. The first thing that I'm thinking about, as I've researched a lot before conducting this webinar, before conducting this session, and I have the first thing that I thought was I found everywhere, and I felt the same. I agreed that staying empathetic works really, really well. If you can identify with them and think about their problems and think that these are my problems, then that works better than any other strategy. Once you feel that this is my kid, this is my problem, and I need to sort it out, I need to solve it, I need to address it, I think that's something that we need to begin with. Inclusive education begins with that. After that, the second step could be discussing with peers, because unless your peers or your other teachers in the same school agree with you and collaborative with you, you may not do much. So it's important to also discuss with them, maybe get a perspective, get ideas from them, talk to them, and then together come up together with a strategy to address this problem in the school. So because we need to support them. They are our kids. Maybe they may be 2 or 3 or 1, but they are our kids, and it's our responsibility. So collaborating with your peers will definitely help you in that case. The third thing is I'm thinking about is then you come to attend webinars, conferences, workshops, something like this session. So where you gain a little more idea about how to do it better. So you search for opportunities where you can participate and gain more ideas about professional development. Now, what I'll do is I'll give you some professional development ideas for professional development. Can you rank them? We have a mentee. Can you visit that link and share with me? I'll share my screen with you. Which one would you do for your professional development? Participating in PD programs, talk to colleagues about it, explore the topic independently. Can you respond to this? Would you do it independently? So most people would prefer to do it independently. A few more? Come on. Which one would you prefer? Okay, so most people prefer participate in PD programs, almost close to exploring independently. Okay, let's go to the next one. So after this webinar, okay, and I want you to come up with a slogan, okay, for inclusive education. What will be that? How will you complete this? Let's be what? Can you complete this slogan with a word? Give me a word here. Go to that link. Give me a word here. Can you give me a word here? Come on, give me a word here. Empathetic, aware, flexible, responsible, motivated, effective, amazing. You can choose any word you want. It doesn't have to be a new word all the time. If you agree with something, you can take that same word and write it here. Compassionate, okay. Can you write it here on that word map? On the Flexi, on the Menti link, if you can do that. Yeah, we have a lovely map, which is empathetic is the word, then flexible. Lovely. You can add more than one word if you want. Let's be supportive, compassionate, encouraging, use anything, okay, to complete that sentence. So that completes our completes my session, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Santosh. We're open to any questions now. You can post your questions in chat. Okay, here's one from Priyanka. How do I collect information about my learners' needs? Are there any guidelines on identification of learners' needs? And after doing this, how do I proceed in my class after collecting the needs?
See, in the last webinar, we talked about how you can analyze your needs, what kind of checklist, what kind of strategies you can use for obtaining information about the learners' problems. I'm talking about difficulties or problems, whatever. So if you can, if you can revisit the last webinar that we did and get the links there in the last part of the PPT, in the references and bibliography section, we have mentioned the links. You can go to those links and get those checklists and all and use them in your classroom. And once you have those, then the next thing can be you think about the strategy that will be appropriate, because we talked about several strategies today. You think about the strategy that is appropriate. And if you have difficulty, you can always write to me. But you have, we also in this case, in the last part of it, of this PPT, I have certain links. You can visit those links. For more information, you can also write to me about it and talk to others who have expertise in the area also. And see if you can get access to more people who have some knowledge about inclusive education and get in touch with them. They can also help you in this regard. So it should, once you are motivated to address, or once you are eager to address your learners' needs, I think you are doing well. That's a very good starting point. There is no stopping.
Anjita has a question. When we give individual attention to certain learners, what do I do if some of the other learners in my class feel left out?
Yeah, when we talk about giving individual attention to learners, I'm talking about the paying individual attention to all learners. And that you can do by creating tasks of different difficulty levels. Like I talked about when you are teaching, let's say, paragraph writing. You can ask, let's say the paragraph is about family. you can ask certain learners to just write one sentence, one topic sentence, or just write the topic and the main idea, controlling idea for a topic sentence. Other learners can write supporting details for that. Who are able to write a little more, they can write supporting details. Or some people can write only the concluding sentence. Just write the last sentence that you would like in a paragraph, like that. Some people can write the entire paragraph. So the entire class is engaged because you created a task of different difficulty levels. It's not the same, but everybody is getting attention. You are paying attention to everybody, and it should be different. It cannot be same for everybody.
Can you share the last slide with the references? There were some more references on the last slide. Some people are asking for, yes, this is the one. Thank you. Shab has a question. Shab on FB has posted this question: which activity should be conducted by the teacher regularly, which increases learners' attention span?
See, attention span, if you're talking about all learners are not paying attention, then there might be, you need to relook at your teaching, then rethink about your teaching strategy. If nobody is paying attention, there may not be anything interesting. Maybe you cannot say that the entire class is, experiencing, let's say, attention deficit disorder or something like that. That's impossible, almost improbable. So I'm thinking about only a few. If you are thinking about one or two learners who are hyperactive or who have problems with paying attention to things, then you can address them by engaging them, by moving them away from, let's say, windows, keeping them inside, keeping them in the front seat next to you, something like that. In the form of classroom seating arrangement, you can do that, and asking them to engage in pair activities or group activities where you have individual tasks assigned to the group members that you can do. And you need results from individuals saying that, did you get the ideas and did you write it down? Yes. Did you organize the ideas the next person? Yes. Did you check the grammatical errors in the sentences? Yes, the fourth. So something like that. So you assign tasks to individuals in the groups that you can do. And paying attention, if you have more students who have attention deficit disorder, who are experiencing attention deficit disorder, then you need to choose activities which will engage them a little more. That means engaging them more in physical activities. Let's say total physical response can be a strategy for such learners who are physically very hyperactive. For them, this can be, they can go to the blackboard, copy things, write for you, create mind maps. That means their energy is being spent. So you think about strategies like that.
Ahuti has a question. What do we mean when we call language learning difficulties as against language learning disabilities?
We talked about difficulties and disabilities. It's a continuum we talked about, where when it's a case where it's not really severe, it's something that you can handle at your level. Something maybe something like a developmental delay, something they struggle to do certain things, and you help them, and that doesn't require any specialist attention. That can be a difficulty. But disability is when somebody certifies, a specialist, clinical psychologist or specialist certifies somebody as somebody experiencing some kind of disability, then that becomes a disability. Otherwise, it may not be a case of disability.
On Facebook, we have Rekha Jadwani, who has a comment. Sir, can you please share the article on handwriting, as I'm teaching from 3 years, handwriting improvement. She's been teaching handwriting improvement classes, and your webinar is really excellent and really helps how to do our teaching. I'm really passionate to teach. My handwriting curriculum does include punctuation teaching as well.
I think what I'll do, Rekha, is I'll add that link, because there is a demand for that article. I'll add that in the references section. So you will find the PPT on British Council website, I think, sometime a little later. So you can visit the website and find the PPT. and you can make use of it. Or if you write to me also, I think I'll also be able to respond. If you want that, you can also write to me at this address. On this address, you can write to me. I can also share that.
Manav Yadav has a question. I think he means teachers. Not all teachers can be equally empathetic towards the needs of such learners. How do we address that? And Priyanka Chug has another one. How can we encourage students to be more open to send students, but not in an explicit manner?
The first question, could you repeat?
Yeah, sure. Not all teachers are equally empathetic towards the needs of learners with disabilities. How do we address that?
See, if you think that you are empathetic, the first thing is to spread the same thing. And empathy, it's something that that comes with awareness. If they become more aware, they will become more empathetic. And in most cases, that's what happens. So if you think that you are aware and your colleagues, you can at least talk to your colleagues about it. And then you may respond, you may say that, yeah, I may talk to them, but they may ignore, they may laugh at me saying that this is not important and all that. That may happen, but can you organize a talk in your school? Can you ask somebody to deliver a, let's say, 20-minute talk on learning disabilities? Can you do that? Can you talk about special education needs? Say that this is there in CBSE, let's have one session. Can you talk to your headmaster and organize one session? Can you do that? If you can, then probably at least in 20 minutes, you can change the perspective to an extent. Then slowly you can do things. You can do things in your classroom and let them visit your classroom, invite them to your classroom, see how you are doing. Maybe it may take a little time, but maybe things will change. Let's be hopeful. Let's be positive. And the next question she had.
How can encourage students to be more open to send students, but not in an explicit manner?
You can conduct a certain sessions. I mean, there are sessions, you can conduct activities which will encourage them to be more empathetic towards them. And asking them to empathize directly may not work, but you can tell them in the form of stories. If you tell them a story saying that if in the story, if you are this character, okay, how would you respond to a problem? Like in the story, there is this person, there is this character who is experiencing LBLD. There is a brother or a sister. Ask them to play that role of the brother and sister. How would you help this person, this brother or sister who is experiencing LBLD? They ask them to respond to that kind of question, once in a while. If you do that, you will be able to create, and throw this question to everybody in the class. Ask them, how would you respond if somebody is, let's say, stuttering, somebody is not able to walk, somebody is not able to do certain things, somebody is not able to write properly, is not able to hold the pen, is not able to write P and D properly. So give them these situations, ask them to respond. And if you keep doing that, I think you will create a lot of awareness, and that will lead to empathy.
Okay, Rajiv has a question. One issue with language acquisition is that there are also issues in motivation along with other factors. And since English is taught as a second language, could you talk about how this works out in the context of rural India?
When we are talking about language acquisition, I understand the question. Like you are saying that if motivation is a factor, and I think more than students' motivation, we are thinking about teachers' motivation to address special education needs of students. Because here, when we are talking about students' language needs, it requires motivation. I do understand. But those who are experiencing language LBLD or language-based learning difficulties, for them it's more than motivation. There is a struggle. There is a neurobiological problem they are facing. And as a teacher, we need to think as teachers. We need to think about how we can help them overcome those problems so that language learning becomes a kind of a normal thing for them, something that they can something they can learn, they can acquire without much of difficulty. So what you can do as a teacher is to enable them. Think about strategies that will work in your classroom with your learners. And I'm not saying that all the things that we talked about in this webinar will work in your situation. There might be certain things that will work, might be certain things that will be very difficult to adapt in your situation or adopt in your situation. So you take a decision what will work in your classroom, what will motivate your learners. You are in the best position to decide that. As a teacher, you know your learners much better than anybody else, I guess. So yeah, think about it.
Okay, with that, we come to the end of the Q&A. Thank you, Dr. Santosh Mahapatra, for helping us become more aware of why it's important for us to have inclusive classrooms and how we can make our lessons more inclusive with different activities. We appreciate the time you took for the webinar and the thoughts and experiences you shared with us. I'd also like to thank our audience on Zoom and Facebook for making this webinar a success by engaging throughout in chat and with your insightful questions. Thank you again.